Barack Obama taking a few parting shots today at Russian President Vladimir Putin during a stinging White House press conference.
Yeah, the president tackled the controversy of Russian cyber meddling in the U.S. election, and Mr. Obama issued a warning.
KCAL 9 political reporter Bryan joins us now with more on the tough talk from the commander-in-chief, and this is supposed to be his last press conference as president, right?
Well, not necessarily.
Okay.
They asked him when he was walking off stage, and he said, "I'm going to think about it." So he could still have one more to go. For 90 minutes, President Obama answered questions from the White House press corps before leaving on a holiday vacation in Hawaii. And he made it clear he believes Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered a hack attack on Democratic Party computers to dig up enough dirt to get Donald Trump elected president.
Good afternoon.
In his last news conference of the year, President Obama was not holding back on Russia's email hacking and President Vladimir Putin and their impact on last month's election, charging that Republicans were subdued in their criticism of presidential candidate Donald Trump's praise of Putin because they were more concerned about winning the election than anything else.
Over a third of Republican voters approve of Vladimir Putin, the former head of the KGB. Ronald Reagan would roll over in his grave.
And Obama effectively endorsed the CIA conclusion that the hacking of Democratic officials and DNC emails was carried out with the knowledge and consent of Putin.
Not much happens in Russia without Vladimir Putin. And I will let you make that determination as to whether there are high-level Russian officials who go off rogue and decide to tamper with the U.S. election process without Vladimir Putin knowing about it.
The president also defended his administration from charges that its reaction to the Russian hacking was too little too late.
I think we handled it the way it should have been handled. We allowed law enforcement and the intelligence community to do its job without political influence.
Mr. Obama says he warned Russian President Vladimir Putin in September when they were both in China to knock it off. His biggest concern, he said, was that the November election not be tarnished and that there be no public fear about the voting process being tampered with because of the hacking.
I felt that the most effective way to ensure that that didn't happen was to talk to him directly and tell him to cut it out. There were going to be some serious consequences if he didn't.
The president acknowledged the U.S. did not retaliate in a public way before November, but he indicated it will be coming.
Our goal continues to be to send a clear message to Russia or others not to do this to us, because we can do stuff to you. There are times where the message will be directly received by the Russians and not publicized.
Mr. Obama also said Putin has blood on his hands for the atrocities in Syria, blaming Russia and Iran for supporting the brutal Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad, while acknowledging that he too is haunted by the images of children suffering unimaginable horrors in Aleppo.
I cannot claim that we've been successful. And so that's something that, as is true with a lot of issues and problems around the world, I have to go to bed with every night.
Now, President Obama also explained his decision not to use military force to defend civilians in Syria. He argued there was no halfway of doing that, and the prospect of going all in would mean effectively taking over Syria. And he said there's no way to do that on the cheap or without boots on the ground. Susie?
Well, Dave, do you think the president's news conference today will have any bearing, any influence on Donald Trump's insistence? I mean, he's been very insistent that the Russian hacking story is actually being pushed by Democrats to sort of delegitimize his election. Do you think that'll have any effect on that?
Well, you know, there are a number of factors now coming into play right now on that, and they may already, in fact, be having some impact on Trump's position, including a Trump tweet this morning that indicates he may be publicly accepting the idea for the first time of politically motivated Russian hacking. And the bottom line is that with all the major intelligence agencies now agreeing that the hack attacks were sanctioned by Vladimir Putin with the idea of undercutting Hillary Clinton's candidacy, Trump may be running out of alternative explanations. I think that, along with Mr. Obama's analysis at the news conference, are leaving the president-elect with few options on this issue, Jeff.